I'm really good at that, aren't I? Slurpty derp, my G's. Hope you're all doing super sick. Let me get you a little slurp here just for good measure. Ah, that is fantastic. Nice little coffee guide on there. So I hope you guys are doing well. And today we're going to do a bit of a continuation on our little journey into synthesis and sound design with Phase Plant's Granular section. And today I'm going to do more of a showcase. I've got a little preset pack I've prepared for you guys, which, aren't I so kind to you? You know, all I ask in return, hop along on Patreon, join for just €1 a month, and it's yours. It's got 12 presets, all using the Granular setting, and we're going to run through those in a moment. But yeah, if you'd like to download it, really appreciate the support for the channel. So you can just get onto Patreon for €1 per month, and then you'll get this one and some the older Vital preset pack as well, and loads more to come in the future on that private Joker tier. So, as we get into it today then, here are the sounds that I've made for our little Particles preset pack. And yeah, I've got 12 sounds. Quite experimental, of course, because we're using the Granular section. So I'm going to run through them, and then we'll pick some of them apart.
The parables of Phase Plant.
Alright then, my G, so let's run through the presets here. So in the particle pack, we've got the best Buy Pluck, which is pretty nice. And it's got a really nice texture on top, which is a kind of Foley texture here. So it's under the Foley and then the resonating structure. And I've created a granular sound using this. There's lots of macros on this one, and you will find macros in all of them. Let's jump over to the Blackimba, which is from the previous video actually. So yeah, one of my favourite ones, made with the kalimba there, and yeah, like I mentioned before in the last tutorial, kind of just adjusting the amount of grains, also the length of them, and then the position at which we find the grains in the sample. So really nice one there. That's got a lot of reverb and distortion and filtering to bring out that character. Alright, the comb flux. Again, quite a nice and nasty, dark kind of bass that could be used for neurofunk or just some kind of dark D&B styles. We've got some groove control. So kind of dealing with the speed of the LFO here. And then, yeah, a nice drive to get a bit more distortion going on. Gonna wash the sound out if you want to put it more into the background as well. Okay, so that's the nice one there. And here's the Digital Human, which is one of the first ones I made actually. I've just improved it a bit more now. So yeah, really nice textures on here. So here we're using quite a long amount of the sample in the Granular section, because what you can do is by playing with the position here, you can choose how much of the sample you want to use. So here, by having it up quite high, about 82%, it's going to skip around basically the whole, almost the whole sample, you know, to find the grains. So it's a little bit better for something a bit smoother in a sense. So we've got this kind of smooth human texture over the top of like some kind of gritty sine wave with a bit of sort of FM going into it. And yeah, I'm using a lot of effects on everything because I want to make it as sounding as best as I can. And so here's one of the things I like to do a lot as well recently, which is the it's how I get a little bit more grit into the overall sound with the ring mod. And basically putting it onto the self mode, and then basically turning up the bias, and then you essentially, yeah, you ring mod the sound in with itself, and it creates this almost, how can I best describe it? It's like it becomes more gritty, but it almost kind of gives it a really fast tremolo, perhaps as well. But it seems to sort of really like sort of amplify and boost the sound, particularly in the low end. So it actually kind of gets a bit more bass into it. So the self mode on the ring mod is wicked. when you're struggling to think what effect to use, it often fits pretty nicely on most sounds. So we've got some other macros, of course Tony, and then just a little bit of extra delay, so you can obviously make it a bit more spacey. Then we've got the Droplet Demon. It's quite a nice aggressive one here. And here again, switching up the groove a bit and the kind of tone of the sound. And here again, I've used the Granular generator for all of these sounds, of course. And this is the Inharmonic 7, which is in the simple sound Inharmonics. And then on this one, again, similar kind of thing what I've been doing to a lot of them is modulating the position where of the sample, where we find the grains from on LFO. And so kind of starting with that and then building the patch sort of around there. And this sample, the Inharmonic one, is it's quite similar the whole way through, but obviously if you're going to be skipping around to find the cool sections in a sample which has like a lot more variation within it, then you're going to get like a lot more different sounds when I'm doing this kind of moving around here. But this one's sort of staying quite similar, but you can still use it to fine tune the overall sound, because remember this is also going to FM into a sine wave here, or in this case a triangle, and then it's going through a lot of effects. So the small difference here at the starting point will make quite a big difference overall at the end, Same with the grain lengths again, and the amount of grains and their respective lengths. So you can really use that to fine tune like the tone of the sound. But anyway, it's a very subtle one on this one because it is very, very similar the whole way through. Anyway, Global Unison is obviously on here, using that pretty much on most of them. Even if I just use the smooth mode on ×3, just for a bit of stereo spread, and don't blend it like all the way around, still adds like quite a lot of like a nice stereo warmth. So I recommend using a little bit of Global Unison when you can. What else have I got going on this one that is interesting to talk about? Yeah, the waves that I've chosen to use. So another cool thing you can do is when you're designing it is to run your granular sound into another oscillator here, like an analog one with the FM, and then I'll often just switch between the main shapes, Like here, it obviously when you get to like a saw wave or a square wave, it becomes a lot more aggressive, like always, So sometimes it's too much, sometimes it works, So this one is, I'd have to tame off the distortion a bit, but I could get that to work. But anyway, the idea is if you just run this through and just test out at least the 4 sort of basic shapes, then you'll find like the best fit for that particular sound. So that's the Droplet Demon. Let's move on to the Dusty Textures. Really like this one. So again, works really well as a stab. But you could also hold it down and there's quite a lot of movement going on in there. And again, it's all controllable with the groove. And yeah, the dirt, adding in some dirt into the sound. Sometimes what I'll do for that is just turn up the sync. So if I've made the sound already pretty nice with the kind of grains that I've chosen, and then I've got a nice a nice few lanes of effects, and I'm happy with those already. Then what I might do next is you just use the sync a little bit, so it kind of almost squarifies or sawifies the main wavetables, so that will make it like a bit more aggressive and gritty, So just nice way to add in a bit of that sort of synthetic edge if you want a bit more in the high end. But you don't have to obviously have that on. It's a bit softer without it, So but yeah, this is a really, really sick one, the Dusty Textures, and that was actually made using a choir here. So the tenor choir, and Again, you get some nice tones when you can shuffle around. Shuffle around the starting position. Yeah, so that's a wicked one there. Often human voice kind of works really, really well with granular synthesis, I've found. There's loads of things that work nicely, but human voice is one of my favourites. So here we've got like a really, really aggressive kind of almost Reese kind of bass. With a bit of a sort of Android edge to it. Again, we can control the groove. The Tony gives it a little bit more of a drive, and this has been made with a upright piano here. You know, so it's really contributing, you know, the whole sort of character to the sound always, the specific granular sample that I've chosen. And so again, I'm just loving it because where I would normally just FM a sample into the sine wave or whatever, now I can basically do that, but also control, you know, how the sample is sounding through the granular effects. So you get that extra level of control when you're like trying to create a new tone for a new sound. So I've got this one here with Overnoized, which is sick as well. So really dark, punchy, kind of bassy sound with a load of noise on top. So it's less about the melody and the tone on this one. It's more about the fundamentals, like the low end and the high end, you know? So you don't get too much difference between you know, playing the notes on the keyboard. That it all sounds pretty like static still. Obviously you can definitely hear the change in note, but like the whole bass is mostly centered around that kind of just quite atonal kind of sound, you know? So great one shot or thing or something like that to use in your track. Like I wouldn't necessarily write like a lead line with it, but can definitely have that full impact when used correctly in the right spots. Yeah, and that noise on top is really nice. It's actually had a lot of sort of release and delay on it, this sound, when I designed it, so I've made a macro to sort of tighten it up again here. But yeah, really, really nice and dark, and definitely a space for that in a lot of tracks, in my opinion. Here are the popular bubbles. Which sound wicked, have a bit more of a discernible tone on this one. Again, the groove, just kind of shifting the speed of everything. And this one was actually made from a harp, would you believe it? I love the way the kind of grains look here on the display as well. It's kind of like, looks like a laser gun firing off. So yeah, here just chosen the simple sound transient and then the harp. And then I'm kind of using the tail of the harp here. So you could bring that back a little bit. If you want to use more of those harmonics, in this case I've used the tail sort of closer towards the end. So essentially I'm using a little bit less of the granular sample in this section. It's kind of accounting, you know, just giving it that extra sort of 20% of interest to the whole sound. But obviously if you bring it back to where there's more harmonic content, you know, you'll get a lot more going on. But I designed the sound using the end part of the tail and then ran that through like a lot of distortion and things. So now going back to adding more harmonics is going to make it a little bit too extreme. But yeah, it's a wicked one as well here, the popular bubbles. So last three then, we've got the Slither Cave. So this was something a bit more ambient sound design here. I wanted to include something a little bit, more as a sort of effect sound that you could use in your track. Even sounds nice at a high octave. And so here's an example where I've used the chord mode in the Granular synth as well. So this one, believe it or not, is made from a clap. Okay. And really the Granular section here is adding all of the sort of high-end and interesting textures in the top of the sound. Okay. And especially with the chord mode, it's getting that extra level and like even higher harmonics into the sound. And the chords are wicked on the Granular effect for this reason, because if you want to get some extra, like, more high-end from it in a natural way, the chords are sick for that, especially the octaves, because then you don't run the risk of, like, making things too much like a chord sound. You know, you can just get one octave up, extra harmonics going in. So that would also be wicked. But here, I kind of like the way the minor one sounded. So I've just gone for that. And yeah, again, like, that's adding all this kind of high-end interest to the sound. But it's, you know, it's running through a sine wave in the FM. The sync mode is being quite active here to give it some more kind of bite and extra interest in the highs. But then, you know, what's making it more of an ambient is the sheer use of reverb on this one. So I've got the chapel center on the convolver used, like, in quite a high amount. And then I think I've got another... Is that the only reverb? Well, then we've got just a normal algorithmic kilohertz reverb as well, quite high up at 50%. Yeah, I've got the frequency stack mode on here on this guy as well. So this one is, again, adding some more, like, higher harmonics in almost like a chord fashion. So a lot of kind of chord and extra harmonics being brought into the sound here. Yeah, some delay on the end as well. And again, lots of ways you can wash out the sound and do some more things up here on the macros. But let's move it over to our last two then, which is the walk slowly. Doesn't sound that slow anymore. I think I changed the groove on one of the macros here. So the dirt one here really is adding quite a lot, and I'm doing a lot of kind of small distortions on a lot of the different effects, and then I think the sync mode coming up again on the oscillators here. But yeah, getting some more harmonics in there. And yeah, this one is using a harmonica, believe it or not. So this harmonica had a really nice start to the sound. It faded in quite softly, so I was able to skip around in this section here where there weren't too many harmonics in the harmonica, and use that as a basis for the kind of starting movement in the sound. On a nice LFO here, which is, again, I've just drawn it in, so it was a ramp down, and I've just kind of softened it by drawing in some points, having it a little bit more faded in so it wasn't so clicky at the start. Okay, and modulating again the grain length and the amount of grains a little bit on the LFO, as well as the position. So these are the three main modulators that I like to use still. Yeah, so finally then, after the walk slowly, we have also the Water Demon, which is a brother of the Droplet Demon. Okay, it's the big brother. And a little bit of a slower kind of movement to this sound, but it's got these kind of water droplet effects on top, basically, which is that's why I named it that. And this is coming from the Data Loop 2. So on the simple sound section, Data Loop 2, and then in this one you've got these kind of weird little transients and droplets. And here is one of the examples where the harmonics are quite different in the sample, and you can really move around and get very different sounds. It's these different kind of droplet textures on top of the bass, you know. So loads of cool spots in there. You can just move that one around yourself if you like. But yeah, I like this one because it didn't have such a transient, so the main bass is still like the main kind of transient part of the sound, and then the droplet is sort of a tail afterwards. And then, yeah, here I've used a bandpass filter. If you take that off, you'll get a lot more harmonics back into the sound, but I wanted to have it sort of quite controlled, so I kind of started off with a nice bandpass movement on my LFO. And then because that takes out a lot of volume, end up distorting it and boosting the volume a lot more after the filter, you know, so that's important. So great way to shape your sound, I think, in Kiloheart's phase plant sound design. If it's often too crazy and there's too many harmonics, throw on a bandpass filter and you can get a nice controlled shape and movement going on. And then once you've got that on there, because it will really reduce the volume, you can start to re-boost everything especially by distorting it a lot, you know. So that's one sort of formula you can use for your sound design. And here, yeah, we're going into a triangle, which is just like, it just felt slightly more powerful on this one. And again, I've used the chord mode on the grains here, so didn't quite get that full kind of high-end sparkly droplet effect until I added in the octaves to get those extra harmonics to be generated in the high end. So often worth experimenting with, throwing on the chord mode and seeing if you want those extra bits in the high end or not. So just you can switch that on and off and just check. Here it's a little bit kind of normal, you know. It's not like bad or anything, but it just wasn't quite as bright. So great thing to always check if the chord mode is going to enhance the sound or if it's going to be too much. So it's one thing you can always look at. So that's basically, the Phase Plant Particles little preset pack, available on Patreon. Like I said, just for €1, you might as well join and help your boy out. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video today. There's a few like random little tips and bits in there just by looking at the whole pack. But I'm going to make some more sounds using the granular synthesis in the near future and see if we can get something really, really special. And then we'll take like a little case study showcase look at one sound and talk about that for like 20 minutes or something. Because yeah, this one's sort of spread out about a bunch of different sounds with some like kind of different ideas in each one. But yeah, really, really enjoying the granular section still. I think it's enhanced the synth so much more, and I'm definitely using it like an absolute nutter to try and get some absolutely wicked sounds for you guys. So thanks a lot for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't already, because then you won't miss a video. And when I do come up with something really, really sick, I'll be sure to share it with you guys as soon as I literally have the idea ready for you. So yeah, stay tuned. Peace out, my guys. Much love. See you soon.